What's that? Yep, with email. Yes. Great. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to Town Hall's current artist in residence, Gretchen Yanover, who is exiting the stage right now, for the lovely playing. I hope everyone will keep an eye on the upcoming calendar. Gretchen has a findings event that's going to be happening in January, and we would love it if everyone would come out to that. So, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at Town Hall's annual member meeting. It's exciting to see community members filling the seats of the Great Hall once again, and I'm really thankful to folks who are attending virtually as well. My name is Anthony Canape, and I'm the membership manager for Town Hall Seattle. You've probably got quite a few emails from me, and you may be tired of me, but I'm not tired of you yet, so thank you for being here. As we begin, I want to acknowledge that our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. Throughout the program, as you encounter yourself having questions, we would love for you to please give us those questions through our new member meeting our member meeting question platform. There's a QR code up here with the link as well. The link is meet.ps/member meeting. Tonight, I'm joined by Town Hall's Executive Director, Wier Harman, to answer some of your questions.
Thank you. Thanks.
So thank you all for coming, and Wier, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Anthony. Nice to be in physical space with you again after a whole lot of Teams meetings.
I see that Wier stole my idea for my outfit tonight.
Interestingly, I was pretty sure he stole mine, but it's all right. Whichever way, it's a good one.
To begin, Wier, let's talk a bit about really the most exciting news from this season. We're home again. We're back in the building, and we're programming with people in physical space. What are some of the factors that guided our decision to reopen our doors in September, and how has in-person programming been going so far?
So those of you who've been members for a while will have heard me give a version of this before, which is to say I'm gonna rely pretty heavily on my notes tonight because it'll help me avoid my most errant flights of rhetorical fancy. So forgive me as I sort of look down a lot, but I think the most important thing to know is that it was important to us to be among the first organizations to reopen because we knew we could. The nature of our programs, of how we build our calendar, gives us a flexibility that a lot of other nonprofits and cultural organizations didn't have. And the fact that about half of our calendar are rentals by other community nonprofits was also huge for us. We wanted to be here to serve our partners. It's really the core of our mission, even more than the work we produce ourselves. We thought that announcing our reopening would encourage other presenters to make their own plans to produce. And we hope that Town Hall can be a part of restoring a feeling of civic health, bringing people out of isolation and back into community with each other. In deciding to reopen on the early side, we also considered that we had kept most of our administrative staff on board throughout the pandemic. We knew that, thanks.
Thank you.
We knew that some people would feel comfortable coming out and others wouldn't, so we made a commitment to offer live streams of every program when possible and to try to leave no one out. I'm personally gratified that when we're open in the building and online, in-building attendance generally doubles the online attendance, which is a relief to me, but it gives me hope that we'll gradually be able to return to pre-COVID attendance levels. Obviously, after all of that, it was also important to reopen safely. And absent clear guidelines, we had more what not to do's than how to do it's. A little group on our leadership team spent about 18 months surfing all the changes in COVID protocols for the in-person recordings that we did and office interactions. But in deciding to reopen, we had to suddenly start thinking about patrons too. And so we're fortunate that we're participants in a roundtable of local cultural organizations that have been meeting essentially weekly since the start of the pandemic. And once we decided to reopen, we thought it would simplify things for everyone by aligning our practices with the other theaters who would also plan to reopen this summer, in particular, Seattle Theater Group, and they're the folks who run the Moore, the Neptune, and the Paramount. So if you've been to other venues too, we hope your experience has felt pretty standardized, and we hope you'll reach out if you have any questions about our COVID practices in relation to other places, or just generally, if there's anything you've experienced somewhere else that would help you feel safer at Town Hall.
The first event that I attended in the building was Marcus Harrison Green on September 29th, and I think it was a beautiful thing to be back in the building again, to see that warmth, to see that community really in an organic way that had felt so digital over the entirety of the pandemic. And I'm wondering, what are some of your highlights from in-person programming and events that you've attended?
Thanks for asking. Isn't it cool when we get to host those like big nights for local presenters or artists? It's one of my favorite things that this place can do, help us celebrate successes by people who live and work here when they release new things into the world. And that was such an amazing celebration of Marcus's work, and it felt to me like an acknowledgement of his growing influence on the cultural and political conversation in this city. So that would have made my list too. I also loved the season's opening night with Seattle Walk Reports, dryly witty Susanna Ryan and Mossback Knut Berger. She has this wonderful book that celebrates our city's more offbeat landmarks that she's encountered on her walks around town. I think personally a lot about the question of civic memory and if there can really be such a thing, and if so, who holds it. So I really liked being in a room with two witty, generous observers of that sort of a thing, and 200 plus others eager to plumb what exactly makes Seattle, Seattle. There was also a night with a quartet of speakers from San Francisco, mostly tech executives and theorists, in our forum space, talking about how which those of you who know me well know that might not be a likely candidate for something that I'd be super excited about, but they were talking about how we might reboot the social and economic implications of big tech. That is something I'm passionate about. The conversation was really great, but I was really struck by their profound gratitude to us simply for being open and being willing to host them in physical space with each other. 4 people traveled from San Francisco because there wasn't a venue in San Francisco where they were able to do a live event together, because Commonwealth Club at the time wasn't doing in-building events yet. And they were happy to travel to Seattle to simply have the opportunity to do that together. And that really struck me, especially unexpected for a gaggle of technologists, I thought, at any rate. So that was memorable. I'm also a sucker for the music in both of our rooms, so I have to call out Quetzal, our first global rhythm show of the year. Incredible energy. I was out of town, but I heard that Earshot's show with Benny Green, the pianist, was awesome. And I just have to call out that Earshot have been such fantastic partners for us throughout COVID. I have to say that those monthly concerts we did from the forum were such a balm to me throughout the experience of COVID, and I hope some of you had the chance to enjoy those as we all went through that together. And thinking of Earshot, Diane Reeves and Chucho Valdez, that Earshot show in October was an actual bona fide top 10 town hall experience for me of all my time here. It's the same kind of chills I've gotten every time we've had Mavis Staples in the room, if you're counting. She's been in the room 3 times. But obviously, Diane has a completely different vocal character, but just the same kind of command of the room, just extraordinary. And by the way, I'm going to take this tiny digression as opposed to all the other digressions to say that thinking about my top 10 favorite things at Town Hall was exactly the kind of exercise I like to put myself through these days, of kind of looking back and considering things that I'm really grateful for or glad about, like putting a corral around something as a way of thinking about my life. And so I can't promise we'll find an opportunity to ask you for that input, but it might give you some pleasure to think about that in the context of Town Hall or something else, just to sort of take a moment to reflect back on experiences perhaps here that you've felt really great about over time. One last thing. A lot of answer, but this is such a great question. It made me really happy to think about it. I really loved No No Boy, which was the event we just had 2 nights ago on this stage, and I hope some of you were able to join us for that, because in some way it was every single thing we hoped a night at Town Hall can be. It married inspiring original music to scholarly depth of storytelling around various dimensions of the Asian American experience, refracted through the decidedly all-American idiom of folk music. And No No Boy also built short videos to accompany the songs that gave the night this kind of documentary vibe. It was this really cool hybrid form that I've never seen before. It felt like a chapter from the People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn's book, set to music. I'd never seen anything like it, and it redefined what folk music can be, who can make it, and how it can speak for more of us in this country. So that was a really important night for me, too.
Since we're talking about programming, they don't know I'm going to do this, but Megan and Shinyi are here. And if you have a chance while you're here, give them a shout out. They've been doing incredible work. And there's a lot of great programming coming up on our calendar. And yes, please.
Shout now.
So thank you, Shani and Megan. And also Ginny, who's been doing work on our podcasts. We've had the Beast of Seattle podcast residency, and I hope many of you have tuned in for that. It's fantastic. I think the last one was on corvids, was on crows, or maybe that one's upcoming.
It's coming.
Please double check that.
Yeah, we have a live event.
But as we're also doing programming here in the building, there have, of course, been some struggles with that. And maybe not all struggles, but some things that we just had to learn and figure out how to do in a different way. So tell us a little bit how that's been going for you, Wier.
I want to say one quick thing, by the way. The reason that I'm able to read from the script is that the questions were shared with me in advance. But further, the questions were generated by Anthony's solicitation of members before the fact. So all this is stuff that folks asked us to talk about. It's not, it's not our own boilerplate, believe me. At any rate, I think the obvious thing I would say is staffing for events or restaffing our events. Fortunately, a number of our longtime team members like Stephanie, Shanwa, and James came back, along with sound engineers Dave and Luke, joining folks who stayed on all the way through, like engineer Mo and live stream whiz Josh. But I'm sure by now you've heard the news, hiring and retaining staff isn't easy right now. So that's been a bit of a challenge. Another challenge is that a lot of our publishing partners have been reluctant to send their authors on tour this year. And some events originally booked in the building have shifted late in the game to virtual only or been canceled altogether. Finally, I would call out the constantly evolving guidelines of from King County Public Health and the CDC that make for all these little course corrections and little impromptu meetings and the coordination with other organizations. And while we think we know what audiences want, it's still a little bit of a mystery, to be honest with you. We hope that we'll be able to overcome some folks' hesitancy to rejoin us in person, since we think that that's where the experience of Town Hall is richest for everyone.
So we went through an entire season of completely live-streamed events, and one thing that a lot of members and patrons have been asking is if we're going to continue to do live streaming. There's been a lot of support for our virtual programming and how we can reach such a further audience with it. So what is the future of live streaming and virtual events at Town Hall?
I probably should have held that last thing I said until answering this question, shouldn't I have? But at any rate, okay, first thing, despite my obvious preference for being together, I want to acknowledge that many of our virtual events have been really, really great. Sometimes even better than they might have been in the hall, and it pains me to say that out loud. But they've sometimes also made things possible that couldn't have happened in real space. Some wonderful interview partners, for instance. But as for at-home attendance, right now there's a little bit of an information gap. We're not really sure how many folks who are attending via live stream are doing so out of a hesitancy to show up in person right now, or how many are actually expressing a long-term preference for engaging in Town Hall that way. This is not an unsolvable mystery, and pretty soon we'll come right out and ask you, and it will help us calibrate the interest going forward. But it's worth noting that we've learned that a commitment to ongoing live streaming has real expense implications for us, and at the same time, we're understandably reluctant to urge people to use live attendance, to replace live attendance with live stream. So as an ongoing commitment to maximizing access, we're definitely interested. But we've got so many new enhancements to the live experience planned for this building. I was about to call it a new building, and it isn't a new building, but it feels like one since we were only here for 6 months before COVID showed up. But new ways that we want to gather before and after events in the reading room or the auto bar, new refinements to the Q&A process for our events. Even though I know not everyone will agree, here's digression number 4 of the night, we consider Q&A an integral, even sacred part of the production of our events. It's the moment the audience gets to interrogate the ideas the speakers have presented, and it's the way an encounter with, say, Neal Stephenson, who we'll have that moment with in just an hour, becomes Seattle's encounter with Neal Stephenson, if that makes sense. And Q&A during the pandemic, I'll come clean, has sometimes been pretty sad. We've got plans to implement some changes to the process around Q&A, but it's really important to us to get that right. So anyway, that's some thoughts about virtual and live stream attendance in the future.
Sorry, I lost my place. It has been pretty amazing to see how far-reaching our virtual programming has become, especially throughout the entirety of the pandemic. And in so many ways, it's opened up a new realm of accessibility for Town Hall, which is an important core tenet of what our mission is as an organization. So speaking along those lines of accessibility as well, we're hoping to give you a brief update of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well, because we're responsible to you as members in putting that work out into the world. So what are some of the things we've been currently focusing on with our DEI efforts?
So before we dig in on this, I want to say that an institutional commitment to equity has for a long time been a part of the vision of the best town hall we can be. A town hall that belongs to more people, where more people see themselves represented and feel heard. But frankly, it's taken a lot of hard work by staff members, including most recently you, Anthony, and your co-chair last year, Amanda Winterhalter, to actually begin to get real traction toward that vision. And I'm personally grateful to you for the work that you put in alongside your work tending to our member community. That is an applause line, by the way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, after 2 rounds of organizational commitments written by a large group, right now we're changing the fundamental way our staff works on DEI, engaging everyone by moving the locus of energy to a departmental level to spread responsibility for these goals and values across the whole organization and integrate our commitment to equity into our everyday work. We want to move from high ideals to personal commitments in how we each approach our jobs. And as we move through the year, our hope is to very slowly create some opportunities for our board and staff to sync up our respective processes. That is a ways down the road, but that's our goal.
So keeping in line with the talking of our DEI commitments, our land acknowledgement is something that draws some comments and some attention from quite a few of our members and patrons, especially the fact that we've continued to do them in our intros during our virtual events. We're not obviously physically in this space during that time, but why is it important that we continue to do these land acknowledgements in our virtual event, and then why is it important to do them at all?
So I fielded a lot of these comments myself, some comments myself, and it's important, I think, to look at it this way. We see the acknowledgement as an affirmation of our institutional values and as an invitation to audiences who might not have previously felt comfortable at Town Hall. It's not self-flagellation or chastisement or performance. We're not saying it to make people feel bad or even personally culpable, although it is certainly not a bad thing to invite a moment of reflection and empathy. I think some people have even felt appreciative of the land acknowledgement as a way to imagine themselves in partnership with generations of Indigenous citizens who have come before in stewardship of this land that we all love. So I think it might help some people who are maybe a little bit land acknowledgement hesitant to understand how the language came to be. The land acknowledgement was created in the summer of 2019 when we invited the Urban Native Education Alliance to serve as artists in residence. UNEA convened an intergenerational group of elders and youth to create a formal text that honors Indigenous history and celebrates the Indigenous present and future of this land. UNEA's Clear Sky Native Youth Council drew inspiration from oral and documented histories and land acknowledgements created by First Nations peoples in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and other parts of the United States to write their statement. The full acknowledgement is much longer, and what we deliver at the start of our events is an abridged version edited with the oversight of UNEA. In 2020, prior to COVID, we decided to create a physical presence in our building to make the statement more visible. It felt like the most authentic way to do that was to extend the collaboration with the Native community, which led us to a public call for proposals from Native artists. And that, in turn, introduced us to Haley Tiathi. Haley is an enrolled member of the Quileute Nation, and they've designed a work of textile art, including the text of the statement, that will soon be installed in our new west downtown-facing entrance. Our plan is that this installation elucidates the spoken acknowledgement, and that location in particular is a new way into our building, chosen by a new generation of occupants of this building that we hope signifies a kind of openness to still more people from across our community. So if you're curious more about the land acknowledgement, there's plenty more about it actually on our website under About Town Hall, and then a header racial equity statement, and then there's a link to that in the body text. But it's pretty clear, I think, but let us know if you can't find it, or if you have any more questions about this. We're happy to talk about it more.
So we're coming to our last topic of questions for the night, which is the financial status of the organization. Following last season, how is Town Hall doing from a money standpoint, and what are some of the things that pulled us through?
So before last season began, we were, I think, understandably pretty concerned, okay, call it existentially terrified about what the year might bring. So we wrote a budget that slashed our expenses by about 35% and featured some pretty draconian steps, especially around staffing. We didn't let as many people go as perhaps some other places did, but we did have a lot of furloughs, and a lot of us took significant pay cuts or hour cuts. Once the dust settled, we were humbled by the unprecedented generosity of our individual and institutional donors. And by the way, those of you who are involved in other nonprofits know this story. It wasn't just us. Folks showed up huge for nonprofits all over this community last year. So couple that individual generosity with extraordinary one-time support from Arts Fund, the state of Washington, and the federal government's PPP program, and we actually finished last year in the black, which I hope we've told that story by now. It was really, that was weird, I just licked the microphone. It was really unexpected. This year, however, is a whole other story. We restored most of our expense lines to fulfill our mission and restore our readiness for the rental partners and speakers who rely on us. And our expense budget actually grew very modestly from the 2019-20 season, our last pre-COVID benchmark. This year, though, no one is expecting another epic mobilization of resources from the federal government or major foundations. And there are early signs of donor fatigue after that extraordinary showing last year. We're not anticipating, I should say, any major cash crisis, but we aren't really allowed by accounting practice to transfer forward last year's surplus, meaning that we're currently projecting a deficit for this year. It's just really a matter of how much. So not really a cause for alarm necessarily, but a reality check that we're sort of coming back down to earth a little bit after the high of last year.
Yeah, and really with a big part of this institutional giving not being quite what it was to like curb the crisis, we're really seeing that everything is going to be in the hands of our members and patrons and community this year, in a much larger way.
That's right. So again, you've probably heard this before, but Town Hall's budget is, revenue budget is approximately 70% contributed, 30% earned. That's how we're able to keep our ticket prices and rental rates so low and to maximize community access. That's the whole compact of membership, right? So unlike Blanche Dubois, we don't survive on the kindness of strangers. We're all about, sorry, at some point in my time here, I was going to have to say that. We're all about the deep bonds of community with and among our friends. And when the time comes for you to renew your membership or to consider your philanthropic gifts, I hope you'll remember us this year, because it is not going to be an easy year, let's tell you right now.
All right, let me pick up this and field a few of the questions we have from members. The first question is, what's the best way for us to support Town Hall right now?
Honestly, I would ask you to continue doing what you're doing tonight, showing up live, and please tell people that you track us and care about us. Encourage them to come live too. I think it's going to beget that kind of sort of habitual behavior and returning to the building will itself kind of create more energy and more buzz, and that's the best way to sort of restore this place to the energy that we want it to see. As much as we want you to consider contributions, we hope you'll also make this place a regular part of your lives again. It's the most important thing I think you can do.
I'll also say it's coming to the time where we're going to be entering our year-end giving campaign. That'll be starting with Giving Tuesday on November 30th. So you'll probably see lots of notices on social media and letters going out. But the year-end giving campaign is a really big part of our entire contributed income for the entire year. And that's coming up very soon.
Anthony does want you to give money, is the real takeaway from there. Anthony's really good at his job.
I try. This second question is really a beautiful question. Which partner organizations, if any, are you most concerned about and think need extra support?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that, and I actually don't want to presume. So whoever posed that question, find me afterwards, and I will. I'll see what I can what I can turn up. I don't want to give you a generic blanket statement. They all need your support. I mean, they do. But I also don't want to misidentify anybody because I'm not really deeply in touch. So find me later, and I can try to do some sleuthing.
I also want to say, having been in a lot of fundraising meetings for fundraisers across organizations throughout all of Seattle, is everyone is seeming to be very intentionally honest with how their organization is doing. So I'd say really tune in and see just how the organizations are presenting themselves. I think we're coming to a time where a lot of organizations are just being very honest with the status that they're currently at.
That's a great point. People are really transparent right now, which is really refreshing. I hope we all keep that up.
We're unfortunately out of time for the last.
Was there
few
anything
questions.
left? Can we do one more?
There are 2 more questions.
Okay, well, let's at least do one. I'll be quick.
Okay.
I promise I'll be quick for once in my life.
Oh, this is an interesting question as well. So what did we do with last year's surplus since you can't carry it forward?
It's great. So it's weird, but it'll go into, we obviously keep it as cash. It lives in our bank account. And we will be able theoretically to transfer it across if we run a deficit this year, but we'll be posting a deficit which has other implications paradoxically in the world, has implications for our relationship with our bank, because we are carrying a little bit of a note on the final bit of our building. It has implications for some of our grant makers, some of the foundations who contribute money to us. It's not a death blow or anything, but we're very proud of having been able to sort of prudently steward our resources in the past, and I think in my time here we've posted maybe 2 deficits in this is the 17th season. So I don't want you to feel that we're in danger of closure or anything like that if we run a deficit this year. That's not the case at all. And we do actually have the resources from last year that we can draw on. It's just that we'll have a net operating deficit in this current fiscal cycle. Does that answer it, kind of?
Very simple. It's all very simple to
It's very clear. Yeah.
But yes, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for our annual member meeting, and welcome back home to the building. Being in community with you, our members, is something that we've all missed terribly. So thank you for your continued support of this organization and for making everything we do possible. This is truly your town hall.
Can I say one last thing?
Of course.
That last thing he said, the next to last thing he said about being here together with you all. I've had these milestones, personal milestones of coming back into this building right now, and it just feels sincerely really, really great to be here with a group of members who made a priority of coming out in this moment to be with us, especially on a crummy night like tonight. So thank you all, really, really. You should all feel grateful to each other. And with that, thank you, Anthony.
Yes,
And
all I have left to say is thank you again. If you have any questions, please reach out to membership at townhallseattle.org.
Yeah, 28 minutes till Neal Stephenson. So go get a glass of wine or something, and we'll see you up here in a few minutes. Thank you.
If you would exit out these doors behind us, either this one to my right or this one to my left, you're welcome to grab another drink in the reading room before you're sticking around for Neal Stephenson.